live as one. I wanna see the world united, learn to live as one. I wanna see the world united, learn to live as one. Zala, que ya no estengeli na bato, bakufela bitumba. Zongisa, que ya no na mituna ya bato, bakufela nanzala. Zala, que ya no koki na bato, bakufela bitumba. Zongisa, que ya no estengeli na bato, bakufela nanzala. We have to bring the world together and learn to live as one. We have to bring the world together, learn to live as one. El instante lo que cuenta. Vive sonriendo hasta el final. Pero vendrán días de alegría.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Transforming Business Models with AI. If you can't hear me at any moment, because I'm in the middle of traveling, just let me know. Send me a message. But thank you so much for attending this session. I'm really excited today. My name is Kamila Sanders. I am founder and CEO of Greater Than Equal and also on the governing council of Catalyst Now. And this is a conversation that we actually had at the Social Innovation House at the World Economic Forum. And we thought, what better thing to do but to continue this conversation and bring it to more social innovators. So super excited to be here and to talk to our panelists today. If you haven't already, feel free to put your name, your information, where you're coming from in the chat. And basically, as far as the format of this session, we'll start off with a poll just to get to know you, and then we'll do a short breakout so that you can get to know each other and start the discussion on artificial intelligence. And then we'll hear from our panelists with a presentation, and we'll come back together and do a fireside chat. And then after that, we'll open it up for questions. So very excited about that. And I know more people are coming in. Did you want to do the poll now? Okay, so let's go ahead and do the poll. And so what we want to know is, how comfortable are you with using artificial intelligence in your work? And I know that some people already use it. They're very comfortable with it. Some people use it and they only use it a little bit, and maybe they're not as comfortable because they feel like they should be using it more. Or, I've spoken to other social innovators and they're like, I don't even want to use it, but I want to learn more. I'm kind of scared. So please let us know that. And then the second question is multiple choice. And so if you are using it, how are you using it? And then if you're not using it, there's an option for that too. So we'll just wait and see, give it a few minutes for people to respond to the poll. Do we have responses? Yeah. Okay, we can. Do you want to show us the results? Oh, okay, perfect. So neutral. Oh, So somewhat uncomfortable. People are somewhat uncomfortable or neutral. It's still very new to some people. And then we have some people that are very comfortable, so probably using it now. And mostly for content creation, which is great because I feel like that's kind of where people are starting research and information gathering. That's very interesting. I'm sure we'll touch on that about some of the pros and cons. And then 33% are not using AI yet. So perfect. Thank you so much for participating in that poll. What we're going to do now before we get into the conversation is that I would love to do breakout sessions so that you can get to know each other and get to know how you're going to use AI. Before we do that, though, I would love to have our speakers to introduce themselves so we know who else we're talking to. You want to start, Amit?
Yeah, I'll jump in. Good morning, good evening to you in Europe. Good morning from San Francisco. I'm Amit Pradhan. I'm the founder and CEO of Rainfall, which is the world's first self-sovereign AI platform where the AI actually belongs to each individual. I've been involved in the world of AI for about 27 years now. Started the world's first privacy-focused AI lab called Zero about 18 and a half years ago, and been involved in the world of decentralization for about 10, 12 years. Co-founded the Silicon Valley Blockchain Society, and I sit on the Global Mobility Council of BMW. I've served on the board of the Norwegian Refugee Council, which is the frontier conflict refugee agency in the world. And I mentioned those things because I'm deeply driven by the idea that um, the power of exponential technology, when we think of AI, when we think of decentralization and the blockchain and the currencies that come with that, when we think about the different infrastructure layers, whether it is traditional infrastructure, decentralized infrastructure, and as we start heading towards quantum, if we aren't focused on creating a net positive impact on the planet and the people who inhabit it, then I think we are both abusing our privilege, but also losing out on some of the greatest opportunities. And a lot of my work, be it with fundamentals of responsible AI and how we build a future around using AI in a way that touches people's lives positively, or with applying that to even some of the world's most um, vulnerable populations, has been built around that thesis. So really, really glad to be here and lovely to see everyone and looking forward to sharing with you over the next hour.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And our next speaker?
Hello, my name is Tadej Slapnik. I'm coming from Slovenia. I am a chairman of Slovenian chapter of Catalyst 2030, but for last more than 20 years, I'm mainly engaged in social innovation in combination with developing various solutions with new technologies, from blockchain to metaverse, but recently also with Kotruli Business School, we are developing business-oriented platform enabling companies to utilize the AI in their everyday work. And today I will be sharing some first steps that we are doing on this field. I'm really happy to be with you.
Thank you. And so now that we've gotten to know our speakers, let's get to know each other. We're going to do breakout rooms of 10 minutes. You'll be in the room with 5 to 6 people, so take a couple of minutes each. And just introduce yourself. Where are you calling in from or where you're dialing in from? And then your organization, and then also share, like, are you using AI personally or in your work? And if you're not, maybe, share what are some of your hesitations, but we'll give that about 10 minutes. Did you do the breakouts for, how many people did you do it for?
Four people per room.
Oh, okay, okay. I was thinking since it's a smaller number of people. If, thanks. So welcome back, everyone. I hope you had some really great conversations in your breakouts about artificial intelligence. And if you're using it, how are you using it? And if you're not using it, what are some of your thoughts or hesitations? And I'm wondering if you want to either put in the chat some of your insights from the breakout, and does anyone want to come off mute and talk about, something from the breakout session, maybe how you're using artificial intelligence, or if you're not using it, what are some of your thoughts? And maybe a couple of people can share. Anyone want to talk about how you're using artificial intelligence now?
Lisa, maybe you can share, since that's something that you briefly mentioned in our breakout room.
Sure. Okay. I am not using it yet. It's it's a plan. It's not happening yet. Anyways, I here in Greece. I'm based here in Greece, and I have launched a sustainability agency. It's called Urban Camel. I provide clients with strategic research and innovation services for the circular economy and sustainable growth, and training, upskilling for the circular economy. And along with that, I'm currently discussing the creation of an AI app, a chatbot, basically a generative AI that would be fed with some documents, and based on these documents, the bot would answer to the clients any questions that they have around the circular economy and how they can implement it in their daily business activities.
Wow, that's super interesting. And does anyone else have any insights, maybe of how you are wanting to use AI or thinking about using AI or currently doing AI?
I can
Diego,
share.
oh,
Sure.
okay. Yeah. Who is that? Debbie?
That was Debbie, sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry, Diego. In our room, we were talking about in the last session that we did, and I'm putting it in the chat, they had kind of like the basics of artificial intelligence. And I didn't realize that ChatGPT has these like apps within there, and you can like see the rankings of those apps. So for example, how to write a better prompt, how to use AI for scholarly research, how to use AI for animations, like all these different apps, which I thought was super interesting. So I'm sharing that in the chat of what we've collected from that session.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for that. And a lot of people, even in our poll, a lot of people use artificial intelligence or the large language models to do research, and they use it for content creation, which is great. But there's so much more to use it for, especially if you have an organization and you're a social innovator. There's so much more that you can do with it. And Diego, did you have something you wanted to share?
Yes, I'm an architect, and I'm working with local communities especially in Colombia. And I am not very familiar with artificial intelligence, but I would like to know more and get involved into this, start to work with that.
That's perfect. So thank you for joining us. And I think that's really the first step, is that curiosity, because something is happening. And the most important thing, and I think this holds true for our speakers and Catalyst now, is that we don't want people to be left behind in this. We should be the ones that are shaping this, right? So I really appreciate everyone that's here today. And did anyone else have any other thoughts or anything before we move into the presentations from the speakers?
Maybe I'll just add one is so I use a lot of systems thinking in my work. And so one of the things that I find really useful is I will get ChatGPT to analyze a document, quite a large document. And in that ask them to then recognize come up with feedback loops. So systemic patterns of behavior. And it seems to do it really well. So, and it's been really useful for me in helping me. Obviously, I don't use it verbatim, but it's been very helpful for me to help think, just frame my thinking as well.
So I have a question for you. How long would it have taken you to do that, like yourself, to analyze that document?
Oh, I mean, yeah, I mean, if it's like let's say a 10-page document to try to understand the feedback loops, it's going to take at least, well, one reading that document properly, it's going to take at least a couple of hours, yeah. And then understanding where the feedback loops. So now I can, yeah, it's done within seconds. It's brilliant.
Yeah, exactly. So it's saving us time. And that's I mean, us as social innovators, we don't have time, right? A lot of times we don't have those resources.
Yeah.
So you can see just within your example, some of the barriers that it's breaking down for us. So with that,
Sorry, just one thing on that though,
yes,
is I don't
yes,
always necessarily have the confidence in its response. So that's
yes.
sometimes an issue.
That's yeah, and I think that we'll get into that conversation before in a bit, because we can't just blindly use it, right? We have to be very careful with the outputs and really using ourselves to kind of be a gate for that too. So I'm sure our speakers will get into that, and if they don't, we'll have that question afterwards. But if does anyone else have any comments or want to share anything? Okay, so what we'll do, we'll go ahead and get into the presentations for the speakers, and I believe that Amit, you are first.
That's awesome. Thank you very much. In terms of just controlling the show, do I have control for the next slide, or do I need to request you to change slides?
Yeah, you can just ask us.
Okay, perfect. So I want to take a step back for everyone. I know we're going to get into conversations of how to use AI, and this is often where exponential tech takes us. We've seen these evolutions at different points. The first evolution of the internet, when we had mobility, then we had what I would call the attention and the convenience economy, and we kind of went down the path that tech took us down, right? And Zayed, the example you gave was based out of GPT's capabilities, and we go down that road, and that's wonderful. That's part of innovation. And unfortunately, I think many times we don't take a step back and we don't ask fundamental questions. And I want to ask this very fundamental question to all of you. Who owns you? And it's a provocative question, I know, and the answers are fairly visceral. Because the reality is that, for most of us, I would assume the answer to that is no one, right? We do. And we might have relationships with, our parents, and we're responsible for our children, and we have loyalty to partners and society. But the truth is we don't own them and they don't own us. And yet here we are at this inflection moment in sociocultural structure, if you may, where there are quite literally a handful of companies who have built large AI models based upon our data that is starting to mimic the digital representation of us. And that digital representation is interacting with businesses, it is interacting with advertisers in a most typical format. And at the core, it is an extreme violation of our privacy. But we have gone down the path of, well, there's convenience. Look at all of these things I can do. I almost don't care how it's being done. I don't care who's doing it. But look, I have access to ChatGPT. And it comes with a lot of challenges that society has heard of in certainly echo chambers. There's challenges of privacy, there's challenges of climate issues. These large AI systems are very hungry when it comes to power. They burn very large amounts of CO2 just to run these systems. They also use up a lot of water. One round trip conversation with ChatGPT in trying to identify, those loops that you mentioned, Zayed, uses up 500 ml of water. That's one bottle of water just for that round trip of conversation. So there are a lot of implications, and we've gone down this electric car future because, oh, look, gasoline cars are so bad. And yet, these large systems, just based on ChatGPT's, last version, uses up more than 100 times the amount of, or puts up more than 100 times the amount of CO2 than your average, gasoline car. So it doesn't mean that we shouldn't be using this. It just means that we need to be thinking about these issues. McKinsey estimates that about 330 million white-collar jobs are going to be lost to the innovations around AI. And there's nothing wrong with innovation, but these are sociocultural, issues that we're going to have to deal with. And somewhere along the way, we've created this movement of like, who do we look up to? And so it just depends on, I don't know, the week or the month. And it's Mark Zuckerberg, and then it's Sundar Pichai, and it's, and then Elon Musk. And each time it's just one centralized actor, often male, often Silicon Valley based, right? Who ends up not only inuring all the power, but in many ways their decisions are influencing what happens with the world. And to me, if you really read the social cultural tea leaves in the zeitgeist, and why this question is so poignant, I think that the conversations around self-sovereignty, the conversations around what's happening with my data, who controls me, especially generationally, are becoming louder and louder. And so that really brings us to this inflection moment of thinking about not only how we use AI or any exponential technology, it's how we build it. If you go to the next slide, the way that we, should think about building it is, first of all, the A in AI should not stand for the artificial replacement of the human. That's the wrong way to think about the future. The A should stand for augmentation. The augmented intelligence makes us faster, better, stronger, more productive. All of these things, whether it is in our work lives or whether it is in the way that we interact with community, the way we interact with society. And that's kind of one fundamental shift that I have been advocating for years and thinking about how we build. Next slide, please. The next piece is to think about, well, if it's augmenting us, why the hell does it not belong to us? Why does it not represent us in the same way that, well, we represent ourselves, don't we? We advocate for ourselves. We have control over what we do for the most part, right? If it's our AI, why is it not protecting our privacy? And most importantly, because we are self-sovereign, when we do work, we earn an income from our work. Our work product belongs to us, even if we effectively sell it by virtue of a monthly salary or consulting fees or whatever it might be to the company or companies or the ecosystem that is paying us to create that work product. And so if we start to rethink some of these fundamentals of AI, not just as users, but as builders, we're going to start to create a really different world going forward, so that we don't just become yet another phase of what big tech wants us to be. There's a lot of things that can be unpacked with the ideas of self-sovereign AI. Hyper-personalization is one of them. The company that I run, Rainfall, instead of one big super brain, ChatGPT, take your pick, Google Gemini, the list keeps growing. We flip the model. We are 6 billion connected humans on this planet, 8 billion humans. We need to connect 2 billions in a responsible way. But for the 6 billion connected humans, the idea is that we give each one of them their own private self-sovereign AI, which allows for a model to be created of their lives with privacy baked in so that it can interact with the world, other AIs, other models, and represent you in a true way. And as income starts to accrue from the intelligence drawn from that, that inures back to you. And finally, if you go to the next slide, you know, we'll talk about this more in interactive models, but when the OpenAI battle happened for the board, I don't know if many of you were tracking that. Basically, Sam Altman was fighting with this 5-member board. They tried to oust him. In the end, he won and he ousted them. And I like to ask this question of everyone, you know, and you know, maybe we can talk about this in breakout, but who was right? And when I ask this question of people in the audience, I get about 60% saying Sam Altman was right, and about 40% saying, no, 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 the board was right. They were worried about how OpenAI is being run. And my response to that is, honestly, who gives a crap whether it was Sam Altman or 5 people on the board? That's 6 people deciding the future of the world in the sense that it is the foundational model on which this world is built. That is unacceptable. It was fine in the world of traditional big tech. We are now transitioning to a world where the cognitive representation of 6 billion people is being represented and controlled by literally a handful of AI platforms and their companies, their one male CEO or their board of 5. We need to shift to this idea of the commons AI where we get to participate in AI that augments us and makes us better and doesn't replace us, in AI that represents us truly and gives us true self-sovereign control. And finally, where the governance, when fundamental shifts and economics need to change, or policies need to change, that we're involved in the process. If you go to the next slide, I've been doing a lot of thinking about, you know, what does this mean when we really apply it to things that matter? Like I mentioned earlier, you know, I've served on the board of the Norwegian Refugee Council, and one of the initiatives that I've been working on is called DIME, Digital Inclusivity, Money, and Empowerment. And the idea behind this is, how do we apply all of those core principles for exponential tech in general, not just for AI, to touch the lives of even the most vulnerable? And very quickly, the initiative around DIME is to try and give refugees, you know, connected devices. This is part of that challenge of those 2 billion people who are disconnected. And how do we do this in a responsible way? Give them devices, give them the ability to have their own self-sovereign identity, so they have privacy baked in. Remember Rashida, the refugee who has escaped genocide in Syria and now lives in a camp in Lebanon. Her identity cannot be revealed to those who are committing genocide on her. It's a risk to her fundamental being. But with privacy, if she can start to now engage in a digital world that we take for granted, right? We have identity, we have wallets, we're able to transact. But if she can start doing that and she can start earning an income because her AI represents her and the value generated can bring value to her wallet, then that gives her digital inclusivity and money. That's the DIM. Once you have DIM and you have a device, you can consume the E can be entertainment, right? The E can be education. The E can be employment. She can become a digital mechanical Turk. But the E can also be entrepreneurship, and we can unlock some incredible opportunities, not just for people like us, but for the next billion connected humans. All of that is true empowerment. And so a lot of the work that we're doing is also focusing on that. If we go to the next slide, I want to quickly highlight to you some of the systemic challenges and why we're not here. So I'll just have you click through one by one. So if you click one, so if you think about how most of what we build, you can click once more. It's got animation, so maybe, yeah, let's hold there. So if you think about the tech world today, I'm not sure how many of you are native tech or not, but the tech world is built around the idea that everything is about the what. I'm building this cool AI platform that does da da da. And look, I built it, the how, by doing, you know, using this technique. I use ChatGPT, whatever it might be. Click again, please. And what that has done, I would just, given that it's, just click a few more times and I can just explain the screen. Yeah, if you, perfect. You can stop there. Yeah, stay there. Thank you very much. So if you think about it, it's the what and the how. And angels and VCs, Silicon Valley is a good example, have been feeding that what and how, right? It's like, great, that's so cool. You're building this new AI platform. Here's money. That money has come from LP capital, which kind of says, great, I like the process that's been going on. And typically the market responds to that. So if you're building this cool new AI that can automatically filter your face for these morning calls and you don't look like you just woke up, as in my case, Facebook or Snapchat goes and buys that company for 100 million. So the market has responded, and yay, circle repeats, right? So we keep doing the same things fundamentally wrong. And for me, and why I think why we're all coming together and thinking about how we build for the future is really thinking about the why. Why do we need to build something? Otherwise, don't build it, right? So thinking about the why and the for whom. Is it, in the way that I see the world, for the mother of two who drives an expensive BMW, but also Rashida, the mother of two who has escaped genocide from Syria? The for whom allows us to really design in a meaningful way. And once we start doing that, we'll start seeing communities form around us that are far more impactful and far more invested. And it's only when we start doing that we'll start getting fundamental changes happen in the angels and VCs that invest in companies, and we can go into details in the breakout. And the final piece I would say is that the LPs will start to change the incentives that the flow of money comes through. And so I'll wind up there with the message that at the end of the day, we are at this inflection moment. Buckminster Fuller had this amazing quote: we are called to be the architects of the future, not its victims. And to that point, thinking about how we use technology, thinking about how we build it and what its implications are for whom, and the fundamental why will help us create not just a more profitable and more exciting, but a future that is far more representative so that we can create societies of, by, and for the people. And finally, I'll end with this. My favorite quote is by Ram Dass. At the end of the day, we're just walking each other home. And how we build and how we consume should never, ever forget that fundamental principle, because then we'll build much, much better societies. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for that. And so that's a lasting question for our audience. How can you become the architect of the future with this and not just the victim, right? And then setting that foundation of why are you doing it and for who are you doing it? And that's really where we need to center. So thank you so much for that. And we'll transition to our next speaker.
Thank you. Let's move to the next slide. But I will still a little bit reflect to the Amit before. Of course, I 100% agree, but still we all aware that the speed of the technological development and everything related to this, it's usually enabling us to even not catch the potentials. And I believe that it's also really crucial how to engage and make results in the way that we will be actually reflecting to what everything you explained. With Global Metaverse Council and particularly Cthulhu Business School, we are trying to do some steps, smaller steps, not to solve these crucial issues, where we see that we are trying to build a human-centric AI for the future. We were reflecting some almost 3,000 companies and their leaders who were in the last 15 years attending our MBA programs, and we saw that Usually, some of them, we can go to the next slide, started to use these basic utilities like ChatGPT and others, and that they're really lacking the solutions that they would be really empowering them personally and also, of course, their companies. Here we can see McKinsey report, of course, reporting that the usage of the AI, it's growing, it's really important, but that still a lot of people are not there yet. They are even don't have the skills, even they don't have the focus where they would understand that using AI concretely will empower them personally and also the companies that they are working with. Next one. Some concrete numbers how businesses can be impacted in positive way. It's here that from retail to the healthcare to finance, logistics, education, a lot of impact, concrete improvement of the business processes can be done. Of course, the question is how to catch up with the solutions that will empower us, the workers, and of course the companies that we are in. So, of course, here are the challenges that we are facing: lack of understanding, how to use it on collaborative way. We have many ethical concerns. Of course, we are all afraid about the job displacement, that actually when we will be starting using the solutions on the end, the same AI will take our jobs. It's also complex to do and to use the solutions. Many times they are the good one really too expensive to be implemented in some small social enterprises, social ventures. And of course, for the best quality, we need sector-specific solutions, which also, of course, takes a lot of investment. Next slide, please. So with High-Five Vision at Cotrili Business School, together with many students, we are trying, of course, to solve two issues that we see if we are trying to empower humans with AI. First, of course, we need to pass and to transfer the knowledge for strategical and operational support needed when some company or some individuals are trying to understand where they will start to use it. So we are trying to build the communities who will be able to empower each other and to of course offer this knowledge to the end users. And of course we need the solution, and this solution of course we are trying to do on the way that it will be sovereign, and it will be not directly so dependent on these big providers of AI platforms. Next. What it means High-Five? First, human-centric AI, of course, and we are connecting it with the Industry 5.0 principles. I'm not sure if you are all aware about the Industry 5.0, but last 3-5 years, actually, we are in the transition from Industry 4.0 into 5.0, where the first time in the history of industrial revolutions, we are moving into the human-centric industry, taking care about sustainability and of course long-time resilience. And what we would like to do is to implement AI in this focus. Next slide, please. What we would like to offer and to enable the users, of course, is to develop the central repository of technology vendor agnostic AI agents. We are not thinking about just assistants, but also agents, which will be helping each worker to use personal agent as a tool of course, enabling this personal agent also to interact with other co-workers in the companies, of course, to help them implement the solution in described 3 steps, from the setup to the adoption to some roadmap, how in the future they can use it, and of course, to develop the long-term strategy support for the implementations of agents, AI agents in the company. Next one. The solution, of course, brings all from the adoption as a service, support with the AI leadership and talent development. It's vendor agnostic, I already explained, and it's academic power innovation. So we are bringing the academical background and needs into the solution, of course, to make it usable, scalable, and faster to deploy. We are trying to do it in some weeks, not in some months and some years. Next one. We are trying, of course, to also collaborate with big players like Google, like NVIDIA, but also others. But also we are setting up the research team, which will be able in the near future, when we will have solutions that we talk about in the previous presentation, of course, to implement them, that it will be, of course, the solutions not so directly and indirectly related to the big AI providers. We are working now in test phase with more than 2,000 executives and business leaders that we are reflecting their needs and developing the solution accordingly. But of course, we are trying to do it for enterprises in finance, healthcare, manufacturing, but also especially in social innovation. Next one. We are now in the starting phase. We have some proof of concept solutions, starting to testing it. We are connecting these activities with many alumni leaders that they are engaging, that they are testing it. But of course, we are open for collaboration. We are thinking a lot about how to also focus on the AI agents supporting social innovators. So here we are open for collaboration. And on the next slide, you will see my contacts, and I, of course, calling you to reach out and to do something great together. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you for that. And I think it's definitely wonderful, and for anyone on the call to just be on here and be part of a community that is having the conversation about AI. And that's important to have, another community that you can join, because the way that you're going to learn is really to just kind of dive in and be immersed in this space. So thank you to our speakers, and we are going to transition into the fireside chat. And before we get into questions, and really I just have a few questions for our speakers before we open it up to questions from the audience. And just a reminder, feel free to use the Q&A button, or even to put your questions in the chat, and then we'll open it up for questions and read off your questions and have a discussion. But yeah, so let's have a fireside chat. And I don't know, I think maybe we can take it off the presentation.
Yes.
If that works, and we can just look at each other, because we're talking about humans, too. I think that sometimes we talk a lot about technology, but really, I think everyone will agree the basis behind this is humans, right? And how can we come together using this technology, right? And so one of my first questions is, what are some of the considerations that you see? We have people that are creating AI chatbots. You talked a little about AI agents and putting, documents and analyzing documents with artificial intelligence. But then we talked about the data, right? Where's the data coming from? What are some of the ethical considerations? And I know we had mentioned before about hallucinations. We didn't use that word, but what are some of the things that social innovators should consider when using artificial intelligence?
I'll jump in quickly, especially around some of the implications from a data perspective. And let's take an example. General Motors, used to be big American car company, currently there's a class action lawsuit that telematics data that was coming off the car was then being fed into these systems that were made available to insurance companies that then were able to see which drivers were braking late. And based on that, they were jacking up prices of insurance, right? It's an application of AI, certainly. Look at that. AI is able to find these patterns based upon what the companies are looking for, but it's an extreme violation of privacy. It is entirely the wrong use of data, and they are going to pay a huge price for that violation, which really comes down to the use cases. The first poll was about people using it to generate content, right? Which is great, fantastic. And that's what generative AI is primarily about. Without a proper understanding of how those AI systems were trained, what was the training data that went in, what is the provenance that goes into that data? There's now new laws that are being passed, especially in Europe, that require LLMs or RAGs or whatever evolution of AI there is to be able to, in an audit, show the provenance of data. Because when these hallucinations happen, and even when they don't, we are still currently focused only on output. So what was the output? Did it infringe someone's work product? And there's these lawsuits on from Scarlett Johansson and some of the publishers saying, wait a minute, that LLM was trained on our data. And so that output that we're seeing is output that should belong to us, or we should have provenance baked into that. And because it doesn't, if someone is just using it to get some information, that's one thing. We do that on our website, for example. But when it's used in work product and you commercialize it, what is our participation in that? And there's lawsuits underway. That's output. And that's a complicated minefield already, especially when it comes to consumer data. But it's when the outcomes from that output have either massive fiduciary or even worse, life issues. There's a lawsuit underway now because there was a kid who took his life in conversation with Google's Gemini-based chatbot. And the audit trail shows that while the chatbot didn't say, go kill yourself, it did proffer suggestions that given everything that was being described in the conversations, it understood why the kid felt like the only real possibilities that he had was taking his life. And these are implications we have to be very, very, very careful of. This is more than just, like you mentioned, Kamila, the hallucinations. The hallucinations are factual and they're being worked on, and that's what tech innovation is, and we'll solve for that. But there's all of these litany of challenges. And before you go out and build your chatbot or your BMW or your Wells Fargo, or take your pick of company, those are implications you need to think about very carefully before going out and building. And I think the combination of school of public opinion, instances like this, combined with where the regulatory frameworks are going, will lead eventually to that confluence. But what is the price that gets paid till we get to that point? That is something all of us need to ask before we go out there and say, oh, look at this cool thing I found. I built a chatbot. Someone can interact with me.
Yeah, and I just want to clarify for the audience what hallucinations are. Basically that is when you put or you ask a large language model like Gemini or ChatGPT a question, it will make up the answer. And it sounds like it's the right answer, but it's totally made up. So you have to go back and you have to ask it to reanalyze the question or fact check the data that comes out of there. We have to do our own due diligence, especially as you mentioned, like this will be solved for, I'm sure. But right now, as it's being built and we're learning and companies are learning, we have to do our own due diligence and not just take it as is, whatever AI says. And yeah, it's faster, but you still have to do some checking behind it. And did we have any other considerations that we?
Yes, I will
share?
add two practical, concretely, Elisa mentioned that now she is in the phase of preparing one of the solutions. Two suggestions on such a case. When you are putting a database, of course, it's really important which data you are adding. And if these data are some critical data of your company, of your personal data, and etc., actually, you have to be really, really careful that you're not putting this into the database of the chatbot that you are preparing. And you should go for the solutions where the database is not connected to the platform directly. So you will be using AI like privately on your server and to be on safe side. And secondly, yeah, it's hallucination, but also some additional let's say, mistakes that they can be delivered by such a chatbot. Definitely, we are still in the phase that you have to notify your users that everything what they are reading, that it's not 100% proof. So you will make them aware that what they are getting are information that they are not, they shouldn't rely 100%. We already see some solutions when providers are claiming this is 100% accurate questions to be answered, but here actually I see no possibility that we as daily users are able using these tools that we now have to stand and to claim that what we are doing and offering it's actually so concrete and 100% sure. Just this.
Thank you. Can I add something here or
Yeah,
ask
please.
something? Okay. What if these documents are not documents produced by me, but are documents, official documents from the European Union, for instance? Because that's the idea.
Yes, concretely, we had such a cases, and we were checking out everything what it was published on the website and it was not restricted through conventional web. It's no problem to use. Even it's not obligatory to write down the sources. But if you're taking some documents with the restricted access, then please be careful.
We had someone else raise their hand too. Zahid, did you? You're on mute. You're on mute.
So I had a quick question for Amit. Is this the Q&A bit? We can Q&A now?
We're just flowing.
Okay,
So
cool.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Because I was just I really bought into when you were speaking about sovereignty of AI. I thought that was excellent. I really bought into that idea. But one of the questions I guess I have is just thinking into the future is when you initially talked about how AI models were using the data like conventional technology, using data in order to feed that data into marketing. So looking at us as consumers and how can they control our behavior so we can consume more. So that's based on this model of profitability. So either increasing revenues for companies or decreasing costs in the case of the insurance company, right? So what happens if profitability isn't your main motivation for it? And so how do you
If
gain
profitability
investment
isn't
for
the
AI?
main motivation, you said? I
Yeah, if
missed that.
profitability isn't your
Yeah.
main motivation, so either increasing revenue, it isn't a revenue generating activity, it's purely, like you said, it's the why is about helping the women in Syria overcome have a better life. So there's not necessarily going to be a consumer angle to it or a profitability angle to it. In fact, it might be loss making.
Yeah, I mean, I think both those things are perfectly okay. You know, I think that I'll give you two examples that we're working with so that it's not just theoretical. Using the self-sovereign AI within the Rainfall model, for example, where we're working with an electric car example where an electric car today can tell you you have 20 miles of range left. Here's the closest charging network. Do you want me to navigate, right? That's a good example of predictive intelligence. With your personal intelligence model with privacy baked in, and that talking to other personal intelligence models, and having access to public data sources as well. In that same example, what we're working on is this idea that it'll tell you that, Zayed, you have 20 miles of range left. It's Monday morning, 8 a.m. You need about 140 by Friday evening. Your morning is really busy. You're going to be on screen and the charger at the office is pretty full. But when you get to your son's football practice at 3 in the afternoon, there's a new supercharger half a block away. It has low occupancy at that time, and 45 minutes will give you 180 miles of charge. By the way, there's a Joe and the Juice attached to it that has dairy-free milk options, right? Like this is hyper-personalization based on your life. And the profitability side comes into play because there's a charging network that wants the intelligence. There's a car company that wants that intelligence. The Joe and the Juice wants to attract you to come there. And then you go to, Rashida, the refugee, and in the example that I took earlier, while she has no retail value, and so you can certainly deliver, you can deliver self-sovereign identity to her, kind of that dime initiative. In reality, actually, you can, if you really start to unpack the opportunities, there's profit to be had there as well, or revenue rather to be had there, because her life is not relevant to Joe and the Juice or the charging network, or certainly the electric car company. But if you're AstraZeneca or Bayer or Pfizer, and you're building the next antibiotic, or you're building the next vaccine, or you're building the next antiviral, guess where the next viruses and bacteria are going to morph and evolve? It's going to be in refugee camps. It's going to be on the streets of Mumbai. It's going to be in places where conditions aren't like Oslo or San Francisco or Zurich. And the models of Rashida's daily life and the people around her is much better preclinical trial data for, the next antibiotic or vaccine than data coming from any of us living in, in really sanitary conditions. And so you can start to layer in that value. And if income can be driven back from that intelligence to her, you are now going into context where if profitability doesn't matter to you, that's perfectly okay. But you can actually deliver value back in that entire circular economy value chain. And that's where some of these principles of self-sovereignty, where the principles of privacy, because in her case, delivering that model cannot happen at the price of where she is, because that might, leak to the wrong sources that could lead into very negative outcomes. So you can the spectrum is broad, and I think that's where my point about what are the incentives, right from the LPs to the VCs to the people who are building, because if those incentives can be aligned, we can get off that journey that we've been on of just like build the coolest shit, don't care about who it's for, because there's a company out there that's going to buy it and everyone makes money. Well, not everyone, but at least the early investors and the founders make money. And then who cares, right? What a waste of talent, what a waste of vision. And so that's why, I'm a big believer in the idea that, if you step away from profit and you just focus on, the why and the for whom, you're going to build incredible value. And if your lens is not 6 months, your lens is not just a year, but if your lens is 10 years at a time, my goodness, the things we can solve for are incredible.
Absolutely. I have a question for our
Thank you for
panelists
that.
on that note too, that, we talked about how the large language models, OpenAI, these big AI companies are, they don't look like us, right? They're not the ones, and we need to move toward building that. And so, we talked a bit about using our own data and our own data from our communities. We also mentioned that it's not inexpensive to start to implement this for smaller social innovators, how can we change the power dynamics for artificial intelligence and technology? How can we bring in funding? How can we, gather our data? Like, what are some of your ideals around, like, how do we do this?
Yeah, I mean, and I think this comes down to that, slide I had about like all of the actors in that pie. We've built the wrong incentives over probably the last 40 years, right? The incentives have been very centralized. So the highest incentives have gone only to kind of the creators with access and then access to that capital. And even that capital has worked with the same models. It's rinse and repeat. And going forward, that will need to change both because I think society, the sociocultural tea leaves are telling a different story for the future. The regulations are coming as well. And so if you think about it from that perspective, you start with the ideas of bias, which is what you referenced, Kamila. LLMs are built on 50 years of global north data primarily, right? And so if you go to an LLM, you go to ChatGPT and you talk about, something that ails you, the primary suggestions will be based on Western medicine, on Western approaches, plant medicine, Ayurveda, Chinese approaches, old Chinese approaches to treatments aren't going to pop up naturally, right? It's because of what the training data is. And at the end of the day, if you have a bunch of developers sitting in San Francisco, in Silicon Valley, their access is going to define what those systems are trained on. And that's why we need to be far more inclusive about different communities, right? And their data. But then you start thinking about, wait a minute, but what's the value to them? If they're going to put their data in, how are you going to make sure that it's provenance and fair value is going to them? And so these are complicated issues which start out from where the incentive tree begins. There's large LP capital that's going into these VC funds that is investing into companies that are innovating. And you look at it from many people here are involved in the world of impact and impact capital and social innovation startups. Social innovation startups, impact startups, get 1% of the capital that traditional venture gets, right? In the last, call it 24 months of this AI boom, largely the generative AI boom, $28 billion of capital has been invested into the space. And in that investment, it's not even 1% that went towards social innovation, because the incentives are totally tied to, hey, I invested in OpenAI, boom, valuations have gone up. And so we're not going back to that, the why and the for whom. And it's once we start doing that systemically and the incentives change even for the LPs, a practical example in Rainfall, our early investors are some of the world's biggest impact investors. And the LP capital that comes into them are some of the most, are foundations and families that really care about outcomes for the future. They're not pushing us to have an exit in 12 months or 18 months. We can build foundational pieces for fairness and equality and changing the economic structures. We have some investors who are decentralized investors. They have invested in the currency of Rainfall, the token of Rainfall, which is going to be listed in the next 2 quarters, which means they will have liquidity because the token is listed. The company doesn't need to sell and lose its purpose and lose its vision and cater only to those who have the highest lifetime value. And we did this not only because it makes sense, but because we wanted to create a blueprint for the entire value chain, for founders to be able to look at it and say, wait a minute, there's an avenue for me to be able to build quickly, to have access to capital. I'm not being forced to dilute my vision. And for investors, VCs, angels, as well as LPs, to be able to see a liquidity pathway, but also see that they are part of a 10-year change, fundamental change. And maybe I see the world with rose-tinted glasses, but this is actually coming, and we're a practical example of it being true.
Yeah, and those are beautiful words, and we actually only have a few minutes left, but I want to hand it over to for some last words before we go back to Catalyst now. Did you, Tadej, did you want to give us some last
Yes,
words?
shortly.
Yeah.
I will just share what actually we in Europe are doing. Just last week, we were in Vilnius, Lithuania, together with 27 national competence centers for social innovations. Actually, it's activity of all European member states that they are setting up the national competence centers for social innovation, when we were focusing about other services that we will be providing, like on systemic level to the social innovators, about the digital tools, of course, with focusing on AI. What we are trying to do first, we find out it's a big gap of knowledge, how to use which platforms. Mainly, they are not using AI at all. But then we will try to develop solution, open source solution to prepare them and to offer them to use it for free, or that it will be in their ownership, in order to skip everything. What it was really good explained by Amit, and I believe that through this, that also the society, the governments are interfering, not leaving everything to the companies and to the let's say to the market. It's really essential, and I believe that in some 6 months, where the national platforms, digital platform, which platforms that they will be run by the National Competence Center and the community of social innovators behind, we will be able to showcase the real usage of it and advances.
Yes, and so we see that there's tools out there, and I applaud Catalyst Now too for providing a lot of those tools in that conversation. And so social innovators, we do need you in this, so share this conversation. I'm going to hand it over to Catalyst Now to talk more about some of those tools and some of the upcoming conversations.
So thank you so much, Kamila. So real quickly, as we were adding on the chat, you can feel free to add in the chat any key part or discussion or motivation that you got from the session. Meanwhile, we are gonna present you some updates that we have and some opportunities for other events like this. Meanwhile, we invite you to fill out the poll that it's up. And the last session for the AI series is gonna be on Thursday, March 27th. And it's gonna have also an amazing panel of people working in the field and who are driving impact through AI. Meanwhile, there are the other sessions on the Foundations of Social Entrepreneurship series. You are going to find all the links in chat in case you would like to register and join us. If you are interested in fundraising, these are all the sessions that we are offering in that. And also we have this amazing toolkit to help you more in developing your fundraising and your organizations. With that being said, thank you so much to all of the speakers. Thank you to Kamila. Thank you all for joining and for the input that you had on the session. Find out more about Catalyst with all of the social medias. And yes, this is the end of the session. We are really happy to have had you all be here.
Yeah, thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having us.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Wonderful session.